Today is the
Um,
6th of August,
we're going to,
2024.
so why don't we do we have a small group and some people are coming in. Why don't we do a quick introduction for about 5 minutes? My name's John Mudd. I'm chair of this committee, the Homeless and Housing of Midtown South Community Council, and we appreciate all of you being here. Harvey, want to hand it off to you, and you may.
Yes, Harvey Montague, an architect and urban designer, um, working diligently on the Pennsylvania Station project. We just had a meeting, not we, but the world had a meeting at NYU, Regional Plan Association, to discuss this. And I'd like to report that my vision, my concept is right on. It meets all the criteria of all the agencies that are involved, especially Amtrak. So
Cool.
yeah, it's cool. I knew it, but I didn't hear. I'm glad to hear it. And that doesn't mean we're going to get anything done. It doesn't mean they say they're funded for part of it. I've been funded for public projects in the past, and then when funds run short, they just pull back. So I'm cautiously optimistic about Penn Station moving forward and to correct its ills.
Yeah, if we get a chance, maybe we can touch upon that. But otherwise, let's think about uh, tearing apart that meeting, and discussing it maybe at a later date. Would like to
Well,
see where
housing was a part of that problem that people, and I had addressed this with Layla. Housing, I don't mean to belabor this, but the people in the audience about Block 780 were concerned of the elderly being displaced. And I had proactively part of my presentation 2 months ago, was it 3 months ago, was that we needed to begin to think about the housing that's necessary, not only to house those who might be displaced, but just to meet the needs of affordability in the city now. And that was part of my, as you know, was part of the presentation was the housing aspect. So that's how it ties in.
yeah, I think, well, but let's not belabor this. This is good for a discussion, though. Let's do some quick introductions. Mark, we're going to get to you. You want to say hello, actually, real piffy.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Marc Gross. I'm a senior counsel to the Pomerantz Law Firm and pro bono counsel to Mainchance, of which I started out as a volunteer and ended up getting involved with the litigation. I'd be happy to talk about it later.
Super. Also put your affiliates next to your name. That would be very helpful for people that's signing in, or if we don't finish some introductions. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, but I do want people to know who is here and who they can connect with. Okay. Sue, nice to have you. We know who you are. Go ahead and say your name and
Good morning, everyone. Morning, John. How are you?
be good.
My name is Sue, Deputy Director at the Mainchance Drop-In Center. Happy to be here today.
Good. Sammy?
Hi, my name is Sammy Jackson. I'm with 43 Films, and we are producing a documentary on the challenges facing neighborhoods and communities in the country today. And I had reached out to John regarding his organization and the work that they're doing there in the city. And he was kind enough to let me know that this was happening this morning. And I certainly, when it comes to housing in our particular project, it's an important subject, a critical subject. So I am here to listen in this morning, and I appreciate being here.
Super. Tracy, nice to have you. I think we're going to have you on just for agenda, just for you. I'm glad you're here. Maybe you'll have some updates. You want to let everybody know that where you're from?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to the meeting. John, you are the facilitator, right? You're the one.
Yes.
This is great. My name is Tracy Bakar. I am the Manhattan Borough Director for Intergovernmental Legislative Affairs at Department of Homeless Services, Department of Social Services, and Department of HRA. And I cover community boards 1 through 6, and that's downtown Manhattan, all the way from C Street, Battery Park to 55th Street.
Amazing. You got a lot on your hands, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. Alex, nice to have you here with us.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good.
I'm Alex from the West Side Neighborhood Alliance and the Coalition to End Apartment Warehousing. Please pay no attention to the COVID voice. Thank you for having me.
Oh, Alex. I'm sorry
Yeah,
it is.
terrible. Yeah.
All right. If you need anything, you know who to call, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Good. Corinne, nice to have you. Say hello.
Hi, I'm just a neighbor. I live in the neighborhood and I have lived in New York for 40 years, and I would like to be a part of seeing some positive changes happen here instead of the changes that seem to not involve community decisions very much.
Great. I met Corinne at the at a documentary series. What was it? It was I was there for the, was it Pen Fucking Now, or what was the title?
Thin fucking station.
Yeah.
But it was a documentary about the renovation that's been going on there, and the possible new things that Vernito's going to do. So yeah, it was great to meet you, and happy to see someone else is doing a documentary too. That's great.
Yeah, you have the same mindset as we here, most of us, I guess, all of us. I assume all of us here, and I was happy to meet you, and I expect to connect with you a little bit more often too. Um, uh, Damiante, that's an interesting name. I like that. Damiante, where are you? Shy?
Damn curvy.
Okay. Moving on. Oh, Alex, could you do me a favor and watch? I'm going to give you I'm going to give you let's see.
Watch hands or watch
I want you to watch anything. I'm going to make you a co-host. If you have any, if we have any problems, interruptions. Last month we had,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, we
But
had,
then nobody knew how to get rid of. It
we
was like a
couldn't find him
troll.
quick enough. Yeah.
Okay.
And then just move him into a room or get him off or mute him.
Okay.
So, and also any hands, anybody who has any questions in the chat room.
All right.
And Renee, nice to have you here. Renee Kiet. Did I say your last name right, Renee? She's out for coffee. Rob's here. Rob Robinson, he's always here. Rob. And okay, we should probably move on. Sam, good to have you here. Make sure you put your affiliates, and like I said, put your affiliate next to your name. And I'm going to pop up the agenda so we can get going because we have a heavy day today. Um, we have Mainchance legal battles. We're going to talk to Marc Gross about that. He's first up on the agenda. We've got Tom Angotti here and John Massengale and Sam and David will be discussing a lot of, about the development policies here in New York City. So we're here, we're looking for solutions, and we're working to get together and coalesce to solve the homeless and housing crises. And no policy meeting. We haven't latched onto any policy to work on. Our council highlights farm. We're bringing down food from upstate, 16, averaging about 16 half bushels a week of food. Different organic foods. We're urban farm here in the city is, producing some small amounts, but notable. Nothing like it's been in our better years, of course, but we have some bug issues. And anybody know about farming or want to be involved, please step forward. Let me know. Communities Together, New York Social Justice and Music Fest. I'll talk a little bit more at the end about this too, but we're having a social event September 14th. That's a Saturday. That's on 30th Street between 7th and 8th. We're going to reach out to all of our partners. If you haven't heard from me and if you want to be involved, please let me know. We're going to have music intertwined with some social justice conversations and speakers. And it should be lively, should be a lot of fun. It's a block party. Special introductions. Do we have any new people that is here for the first time? That has something to express and want to take a few minutes to express. Okay, I don't see any hands. Tracy, do you want to give us updates on anything or anything in particular? You're on mute, Tracy.
Not really. We are Department of Homeless Services. We are opening up a drop-in center, a new drop-in center, and a safe haven around. One is coming at 77 9th Avenue, and one is coming on 91 East Broadway. So they are scheduled to open up, I want to say, early next month. So we will have another drop-in center available and a new safe haven around that area, not too far from where y'all, 34th Street sort of like area. What's the area y'all cover?
We cover, well, when it comes to homeless, we cover a little bit more broadly over the city. I mean, but yeah, we're focused a lot in Midtown. That's
Okay, yeah. So it's not too far from Midtown, so it should be, a great help to the community, the drop-in center, and just the new safe haven coming.
okay. Is that 24/7? Is that open 24/7? Weekends and
Yes, they will be.
yeah. Do they serve food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to the agenda. Let's see. Anybody have any announcements they want, special introductions or updates on anything? I'll ask that.
Real fast, John. So there's a new law started on Saturday. If you have an empty apartment in your building that's causing problems, like insects or cold air or storage, illegal storage, now you can call 311 and they will connect you to HPD. Prior to Saturday, 311 would tell you, sorry, you can only call about your apartment, not someone else's apartment, whether it's empty or not. But now, as of Saturday, August 3rd, you can call 311 about empty apartments.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Great. Okay. Rob, you want to talk a little bit? I had this on the agenda. Talk a little bit about your work and what's going on with the criminalization of homelessness. Just we've had this discussion last month, and Rob's talked about this before. But any updates? Any action plans? Any group coalescing? Anything you want to say about that? He must be out for a coffee break. Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to Mainchance drop-in center. We're gonna move on to Marc Gross. And Sue is here too as support and backup and maybe add a little bit, right? Okay, Marc, you want to take it away?
Well, thanks so much for inviting us. I want to thank Rochelle Stearns for having made some connections on our behalf, and as well as acknowledge all the great work that Sue Antoine has been doing for Mainchance on the ground. And also thank Tracy Becca to being present and being an audience for us, because I think our concerns overlap and maybe we can have further dialogue. Mainchance, as you were told, I think by Sue at an earlier meeting, has been operating for 35 years in Midtown Manhattan East. It's on Lexington Avenue at this point, off of Park on 32nd. It's on 32nd Street, off of Park Avenue. And it serves, it's a drop-in center and has served well over 100,000 people over a long period of time. It's well recognized in the neighborhood as a critical resource by local colleges, NYU, medical, as well as all the local politicians. Nonetheless, in January, we were told that it was going to be closed as of June 2024, 2 years prior to expiration of its current contract. We were at a loss to understand why this was happening, and ultimately forced the city to put on paper what was its reasoning for doing so. We were concerned that there was a claim of underperformance and other excuses. The city did respond in May and said that, well, they're changing their model from a DIC, drop-in center, to a safe haven. The difference being that in drop-in centers, there are only chairs provided to people, whereas in safe havens, there are beds. And clearly, beds are better, but nonetheless, is that a reason to close down something that's been operating for 35 years and has a track record of counseling with a lot of people? At that point, we moved to court and asked for a temporary injunction so that it would not be closed as of June 30th. We pointed out that the reason given for closure did not make any sense because we had already submitted a proposal to convert to a safe haven. We had submitted plans, we had submitted all the documentation, the cost estimates, and it could be done. So what was the basis for closing us when in fact we were supporting the very policy that they're claiming was a reason to shut us down? The court initially granted the injunction and forced the city to continue paying Mainchance into the fiscal year, which had not been part of the budget, and set a hearing for July 23rd for what's called a preliminary injunction, which takes a more harder look at the merits of the case. At that point, the city kind of changed tact and said, well, yes, we had previously said that you were not being canceled for cause, but rather any cause or any fault on your part. But nonetheless, as a matter of contract, it says that we can cancel you without cause. And also, by the way, if you've been underperforming. We shot back and said two things. One, we already submitted to you all the audits that you had previously done, indicating how well we were doing, getting graded annually good to excellent. In 2022, we were one of the highest performing drop-in centers and well exceeded the goals. And we can dispute, as a matter of fact, how well we've been doing since that period of time. And we also argued that as a matter of law, even though a contract with a city vendor says that it could be canceled without cause or for convenience, the case law is clear that you cannot do it as an abuse of discretion. You must provide some reasonable basis for it. And clearly, the change of policy, the underperformance, those were inadequate bases. And we've also been arguing all along, without saying it too explicitly, that the only reason that was closing this site, and they put it in one of the emails saying, well, we cannot have a drop-in center at this site, quote unquote. Well, it happens to be that right next door to Mainchance, there's a 5-star luxury hotel called the Miramar Park Avenue. It so happens that the Miramar is owned by Turkish interests. And we've been suggesting that we all know how this administration has done some favors for Turkish interests. But that will not undoubtedly be the basis for any final decision. We argued the case in July 23rd. I must say I'm very impressed with Judge Kotler, who's been handling it. She really understands the facts, the laws. She's expressed several times. This is a homeless crisis we're all experiencing. Why are we shutting down a center under these circumstances? And so far, she has taken under advisement, is the term of art, the decision, but we're guardedly optimistic, hopeful. But as I said to one of your colleagues, I tend to be Pollyannish on some things. So we'll see what happens. Right now, Mainchance is continuing to operate month to month and getting funding for that. The one thing that's cause for some concern that maybe Tracy, you can give some insight on, is that since the point of time where they were starting to process the closure of Mainchance, the JCC people, they're the outreach group from DHS that are supposed to go around bringing people off the street, getting them into centers, particularly into safe havens where there are beds. For reasons that have not made a great deal of sense to us, they've been going into Mainchance and taking people out who have already come in to place them in beds. They've stayed outside at times, asking, suggesting to people, well, don't you want to go to another place where there are beds? It was said that this was being done across the board. I'm unaware of whether or not any other drop-in centers have have the same encounters with the JCC. So we don't know whether, again, we're being singled out or whether there's an across-the-board policy. I mean, in the long run, yes, everybody should get a bed. But right now, we're dealing with a shortage of beds. You're opening up a new drop-in center despite this policy change on 9th Avenue. That happens to be next to a Department of Health office building. There's a safe haven on 14th Street, Paul's Place, which was opened up a year or so ago. That's next to the Salvation Army. They're obviously in locations that are not as as interesting as next to a five-star hotel. So with that, if you have any questions or thoughts, I'd certainly be open to it, and Sue will probably as well.
Mark, you had asked, you had mentioned this to Tracy. Tracy, any thoughts to add?
Well, actually, due to this being in litigation, I can't answer questions when it comes to Mainchance. As far as BCC, you said JCC, I can't speak for JCC. I can only speak for DHS. And I haven't heard of anything about that.
Yeah.
I have no information on that.
Sue, do you remember there was a conference call, I thought 2 or 3 weeks ago, with all the DICs? You want to comment on that?
I'm sorry?
Sue, Jackie and Brady told me there was a conference call with all the DICs where it was indicated that the outreach team was going to start removing people from DICs and putting them into safe havens.
Yeah, they're gonna make go to each drop-in center either 1 or 2 days a week and recruit clients from the drop-in centers and take them to safe havens.
Right. So we understand that's what they say, how much they're doing it. What doesn't make a great deal of sense to me on that, Tracy, and just to give you some thought, is why is the JCC going for people who have already entered shelters as to rather than going to get people who are out on the streets who need to get into some shelter situation? We're kind of questioning, what's going on here. Does JCC have its own quotas that it's trying to show, okay, well, we're getting people into the quote transitional beds, even if we're taking them from centers that have already offered services and gotten them off the street. But I'll let you figure out what's going on, and we'll try to figure out from our end what's actually happening on the street.
Well, I could inquire, but I haven't heard anything like that. I haven't. I can't give an answer for something that I have not heard of yet.
Okay, well,
This is the first time I'm hearing it, and I will inquire and see what's going on, but I wasn't familiar that that was going on. And again, like I said, I can't speak for JCC. I can only speak for Department of Homeless Services.
now, my understanding though is JCC is the Joint Command,
Yeah.
Joint, it is part of DHS. Am I mistaken on that?
They work alongside DHS,
And who,
but
yeah,
but they are their own agency, and
Oh.
they do collaborate with DHS. But like I said, this is the first time I'm hearing this. So,
yeah,
you know,
I didn't mean to,
I didn't know that they was going inside and taking people. This is the first time, so I can inquire, and when I get some information, I can get back to you about it.
greatly appreciate. We're really both trying to, all of us are trying to help solve this problem, and whatever can be done cooperatively, we appreciate it.
Okay.
That's very interesting. I always thought the JCC Joint Command Joint Center was part of DHS too. We were introduced to that quite some time ago, several years ago, and they had yeah, we had a contact number to call, and we were introduced by them through a DHS member.
Well, JCC does work with us. We do work
Yeah.
with a lot of other outreach agencies, but we have our own outreach team, as you know, also.
Right.
Oh, really? Oh.
So is JCC a nonprofit, I assume?
I believe so, but I can't even answer that.
Yes,
I work for DHS. I can answer things on DHS about DHS, HRA, and Department of Homeless Services.
Yeah.
And we have our own outreach unit.
Yeah.
And we do work alongside with Goddard, JCC, and other outreach agencies.
CUCS is there
Well,
with
let's see, John, you're raising your
CUCS
question.
is over Paul's place. They are over Paul's place. It's a I have to look into some things because I'm sort of caught off guard here. You
Yes,
know, I just heard somebody just told me about this meeting yesterday, and they sent me the link. So I said I'll jump on and see what's going on. But a little
I'm sorry, Tracy, something else? I'm sorry. Did I jump in?
no, I was someone just sent me the link yesterday and told me about this meeting. So I said, let me jump on and see what's going on. But like I said, I can only speak for what
Sure.
DHS, DSS, and HRA.
Sure. Mark, these terms for everybody else, BIC?
DIC, drop-in center.
Oh, DIC.
Sorry, right.
DIC. I thought it, yeah, no worries. Any questions for Mark from anyone? Mark, you've got a hotel there. There might be something there for action if you feel like it's coming from the hotel, and I know the hotel industry is huge, and I know they call us sometimes. I've been in meetings and they look for basically looking to move the problem out of sight, and I have often told them that they were the problem. When you overdevelop the city, when you don't build housing, this is the problem we have. This is a result of our overbuilding and not doing the right kind of building. So, Mark, I think there's an action there. I haven't put it together in my head. What other actions? How can we help you? Any thoughts on that? Have you been thinking about that?
Yeah, it's until we get a decision by the court, I'm not sure there's anything to do other than trying to understand more what JCC is doing, because it's unclear to me, are they a city agency or are they really a city vendor? And whether or not they have performance goals, and in some respects, are they sort of not performing what we would all want them to be doing, which is focusing on people who are actually on the street, not in centers, rather than going to centers, because the calculus for performance for for the shelters is getting people into, quote, transitional beds where they stay, for a period of time, and then into permanent housing. And there's specific goals for that. The shelters themselves, which have longer term contracts or, stays for people, have a similar kind of thing. Ultimately, they're trying to get people into permanent housing. We all need more permanent housing. We don't have to address that. But I'm concerned here that JCC is sort of not doing its job, but we'll have to look into that further and figure out who's in charge of JCC, really.
Yeah, we can certainly look into that. I can certainly put out a few emails too, and that was kind of surprised by that. Also, press conferences. We were looking to do a press conference about the overall development housing issues, that sort of thing. You want to be a part of that? Is that to speak about?
Sure. We'd be happy, I'm sure, whether I should be the spokesperson there or maybe Brady or our CEO or Bill Kornblum, our chairman, whoever else. But I think, better have somebody who's actually doing what our services are.
What about packing the courthouse?
No. As it is, it's a Zoom call these days. And there has been a reporter from City Limits who's been covering it. But I think this judge and the fact that everybody from Mainchance has been appearing on it, I think we've been having a very good show. But I think she's in a good. If anybody's going to give us a good decision, this judge will.
Okay, that's nice to hear. Also, I have a letter in support of you. You know that. I had a few signees. If anybody wants to sign on to the letter, we can resubmit it with more signatures. Please do so. And Rob has his hand up. Rob, go ahead.
Good morning, Mark, and good morning. So just a quick question for you guys. When do you expect that decision?
Somebody said the wheels of justice turn slowly.
Okay.
And right now, the longer that she's waits, the longer Mainchance clearly operates.
Sure.
In my experience as litigation, it's impossible to predict judges. And it could be 6 months. It could be 1 month. Maybe right after Labor Day might be a day to look at. But even when we have a decision, that's not the final word on it. We then have to go to trial and have one more round of this with the court. That trial would probably be scheduled in 3 or 4 months after her decision. So but at this point, I'd be foolish to. I could predict the election as well as I could predict when she'll decide.
I hear you. So just a little follow-up thought or comment. And I think I've mentioned this to both you and Sue before. I'm part of a group of people with lived experience of homelessness that meet on a monthly basis with Deputy Commissioner Molly Park and the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, Ann Williams-Isom. I will wait for you guys to tell me when, but I could always put this on the agenda and get answers that might not necessarily be generated through regular channels, if I can put it that way. Right? So
that's great. Thank you so much.
So it's an opportunity. Just keep it in mind. But I will wait for your lead. I won't stir the pot. I totally get how this shit works, for lack of a better way to say it. Right? And the wheels of justice and all of that. But just keep that in the back of your mind.
Great.
When you guys push the button, I'll put it on the agenda.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Okay. Anything else for Mark? Anyone from anyone?
Well, thank you so much for listening. And I know Sue and I have other things to do, but I look forward to further communications with your very important group.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for joining us. Okay. So we've got let's go back to the agenda. I think we need uh, okay, so we're going to be talking about the poor development policies, the city of yes, demolition of NYCHA, midtown upzoning. And we've had several hearings and meetings. A lot of us experienced those firsthand. Some of us are on the board. I think they're here. Why don't we start off with an overview of the uh, overview of what's been going on, and who wants to kick that off? David, you were right there in the thick of things. You want to give a quick overview? We want to start with you.
Yeah, I'm Dave Holowka. I'm an architect and Save Chelsea member. I'm also on Community Board 4 on the Chelsea Land Use Committee, as well as part of Front Parks and Environment. I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, but I can report on what's been going on. And the board has weighed in on City of Yes for Housing Opportunity with a really in-depth 48-page letter. That was the length of the draft that was voted on at our meeting last week. The final letter, as well as a final letter on the NYCHA project at Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, should be available on Community Board 4's website under the Archives and Resolutions section. I would guess shortly. The July letters that were voted through are not listed yet. They may not quite be finalized, but Joe Restuccia, who some of you may know, he's the head of Clinton Housing Development Company and co-chair of CB4's Housing, Health, and Human Services Committee, drafted the 48-page letter, and it addresses, first of all, the history of CB4 as a leader in creating housing and affordable housing. It's a little bit of an attitude of, we don't really need City of Yes for Housing Opportunity. We're doing very well on our own creating affordable housing. It points out that District 4 is the leader in Manhattan in the production of housing, including affordable housing, and ranks very highly in the city. And that largely has to do with the way our special zoning districts have been hammered out. And it's been the work of Community Board 4 to make sure that the way those districts are formed supports housing. But the letter addresses universal affordability preference and notes that it could have a very negative impact on the special districts. That's the provision that calls for a 20% FAR bonus, floor area ratio bonus, for buildings that are 20% affordable. And what Joe is arguing for in the letter is to make sure that any such projects fit within the existing dimensional bounds that the zoning requires for things like the maximum height, and perhaps lowering the base FAR in such areas so that for a developer to build to the current full FAR, they would need to accommodate that 20% affordable housing. And in that way, we would get the affordable housing component without, say, in the special West Chelsea zoning district, creating a building that is possibly 4 stories taller, right next to the High Line and right across 10th Avenue from the low-rise Chelsea Historic District. There was also a request in our letter that the transfer of development rights from historic districts should not be able to pile up in a cumulative way on a single receiving site, and that when those transfers are done, they should have an affordability requirement. There are several other very good recommendations in the letter. There was a push as it was being voted on in the last full board meeting to make it an approve with conditions basis as opposed to a deny unless certain provisions are included. And it was thought by some that voting yes with conditions would put us in a category of greater consideration by the Planning Commission and administration and give our council members something to negotiate with. And others felt that a deny unless was simply putting us in a stronger position and not allowing the City Planning Commission to just toss our letter into their win column and walk away, that we would have more leverage with them if we issued a deny unless letter and really called attention to our serious reservations because it's such a sweeping change. And it also has a lot of potential to destroy existing affordable housing. As soon as you can build an existing building much larger than what you'd been able to before, it puts a target on its back and turns it into more of a potential tear down. So we're very concerned about the potential loss of affordable housing. And there was also a vote on a letter to elected officials regarding the NYCHA Fulton Elliott Chelsea project. And that letter has three components. One is to accelerate the interim repairs that were originally supposed to have been done by Related, the PACT RAD partner. And there was an announcement not too long ago that, in fact, NYCHA would retain responsibility until the proposed transformative changes to the campuses go forward. And NYCHA simply hasn't been doing a very good job of that. So we want to make sure that the current residents are seeing the kind of repairs that they should. The other part of the letter focused on the two development proposals, which are entirely demolition based. And they're also based on an estimate by Related that renovation would cost as much as replacement of the buildings. And yet no substantiation has been provided for that. The entire tenant survey, which seemed to support all new construction, and the current two alternatives that are making their way through environmental review, which are based entirely on new construction. All of this goes back to that estimate by Related, a very self-interested estimator. And we're asking the elected officials to try to help get transparency on that. And finally, to reconvene the original Chelsea NYCHA working group, of which Joe Restuccio was a part, that led up to the request for proposals that brought Related on board. And that RFP was for a much smaller scope of work. It was for 6 infill buildings on the 2 campuses, and they'd have been 50% affordable, a much smaller number of units than are currently being proposed. And it was just kind of summarily announced. People in the community learned about it only through the New York Times in an article a year ago, that that scope was greatly enlarged and that there would be no reuse of the existing buildings. And that kind of cut the community out of the process. So what we'd like to do is reconvene the working group that was cut out of the picture after that RFP blew up, and start to talk about a solution that could gain community consensus and regain the public trust, because there's a great deal of mistrust. You know, we've gone over a year without any financial transparency on the project. And that letter passed and was sent to the electeds. We'll see what kind of traction that gets. So those are really the big 2 developments on the CB4 front.
David, I have a real tough time with the idea. Here you got public land, public housing. They've got green grass, trees. You got families there, can enjoy the parks. You got a little bit more air. I have a tough time as to understanding how that process happened, where the developers came in and wanting to push people out of some of those housing, condense it down to a few buildings and build on that land and build higher buildings. When we also need, and when they talk about, and you know, there's a lot of trouble when they talk about affordability. It's been bastardized and overused, and the whole 20% doesn't is I don't think is large enough to begin with. I think that's a non-discussion because we've had people in these meetings year after year. They've been prejudiced about coming into the so-called affordable housing. They've been pulled off the market. They've been through the lottery where you have to make 83,000 for a studio, 183,000 to get a one bedroom. So I'm from your perspective, how did this process even begin? I know they used the argument that the housing needs repairs, and we got to look to developers. That's been used with Vornado, in Penn area. That's been used over and over. So can you elaborate on that?
Well, it all goes to federal underfunding of NYCHA and HUD. They have initiated this program where they seek private sector development partners to do the repairs and effectively take over as the landlords. The federal government retains ownership of the land, but Related in this case because they won the RFP, and that was with participation of the NYCHA residents. They helped choose Related as the developer. The idea was that Related would be able to build some new housing, mixed rate housing on vacant land on the two campuses. And the revenue from that would pay for the repairs of the existing NYCHA buildings. The NYCHA residents, however, would move from Section 9 to Section 8, which means that the government would no longer be their landlord. Related would. And they would receive vouchers, rent vouchers, that would subsidize their rent payments to Related so that their rent would never be more than 30% of their income. And this has been done in other housing developments in the city. There were 9 of them, I think, in 2023. And the city did an article on that last fall, and they specifically compared NYCHA's cost estimates for the renovations to what things were actually costing when these private sector partners were brought on board. And they found that the actual renovations cost less than what NYCHA had estimated. And that's simply because the private sector partners are, they're more skilled in renovation. They can source materials more cheaply. They can they're have an easier competitive process. They can use economies of scale. So for all 9 such projects in 2023, NYCHA's estimates were higher than what the actual cost was. What happened with Fulton and Elliott Chelsea was that once Related was brought on board, they claimed to have looked closely at the existing buildings and found that they were just in horrible shape, and it was going to cost 2 1/3 times what NYCHA had estimated to renovate them, making the cost the same as new construction. And if you believe that and believe that it was just a toss-up, their argument was, well, it's a toss-up. You have a dozen of one, 6 of the other. Well, let the tenants decide whether they want to be in renovated apartments in existing buildings or in all new construction. And the way they presented it to the tenants in a survey, it certainly favored the new construction option. And they were given 2 new construction options, one of which would require upzoning. And that's the one they chose because that was presented as getting them in these new apartments the soonest, in 5 years, versus 6 to 8 years if they were to go into new buildings under current zoning. And no time frame was given for going into renovated apartments, although I'm sure it would be much, much sooner. There were other perks associated with the new construction options, like in-apartment washer dryers, central air conditioning, things that weren't in the RFP at all. So naturally, the tenants voted. It was a survey. Technically, it wasn't a vote. They selected actually the upzoning, all new construction solution more than they did any other. However, a small minority of the actual residents who were able to vote voted, and it was a very small margin among all of the residents preferring the new construction with rezoning. And then the scope of work comes out for these two alternatives, one with rezoning, one with no rezoning. And the rezoning one says it's going to get rid of yard requirements and separation between building requirements and setback requirements and height requirements. So all of a sudden, you're going to have these people living in very tight density of the sort that their buildings were designed to escape from, with lots of light and air. And they weren't told that before they took this survey. And the survey would not have existed except for Related's, in my view, bogus cost estimate that it's going to cost as much to renovate as to replace. And that is really what I'd like to see our elected officials come back to and challenge this. To me, it's just ridiculous. We're renovating office buildings in the city into house gut renovations for less money than it would cost to tear the buildings down and rebuild them as new apartment buildings. And these are buildings, these office buildings, they don't lend themselves to adaptation to housing. So to me, it's just an enormous lie. Related is making it look like the NYCHA residents had the idea to upzone Chelsea. And you're absolutely right about the loss of open space and light and air. Those things were always what were associated with residential zoning. It's 24/7 living areas where you have people with their children at parks and playgrounds. Higher zoning has always been for areas where people work 5 days a week, and then they go home from that. And the rezoning scheme for the two campuses would introduce midtown-like density into large swaths of Chelsea. And of course, the assumption that goes along with it is that all of this new construction, the cost of it has to be recouped by Related. So of course they have to build tons of new market rate, which is what they're proposing. And that's what they had their eye on from the very start. And somebody has to be there to police this. We now have a mayor's office for climate and environmental justice, which is all about preserving the tree canopy and enlarging the tree canopy. There are like 370 mature park-sized trees on the two campuses that would be lost, not to mention the embodied carbon involved in building all of the new construction. And that mayor's office for climate aims to reduce embodied carbon related to construction by 50%. This flies in the face of other initiatives. Those environmental costs alone, if it truly were a toss-up between renovation and replacement, well, those environmental costs would overwhelmingly make a renovation the only choice. NYCHA doesn't seem like they're willing to put the reins on Related and keep the city from getting fleeced. They just want to get out of the management business. City of Yes, I think it's a lot of the same sort of thing where light and air need to be sacrificed that have always been what make residential districts livable. And the attitude is, well, it's the people who have to give something up uniformly across the city in terms of zoning and historic districts, instead of putting the burden on the real estate industry and being like other municipalities that insist that, say, 10% of all new apartment buildings be affordable, as they do in many Westchester municipalities.
Yeah, and that gets into discussion what that affordability is. But that also begs a question. Okay, you've got this agency you talked about, this new agency. How independent would they work when they're under the office of the mayor?
That's a good question. And they made a nice presentation to CB4's Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee meeting recently. And I asked them if they would be able to do something like an audit of the NYCHA proposal. And they said they don't do that kind of thing.
Okay. Rob had a little bit of history lesson. Rob, you want to pop in here? I saw something you was
No,
very...
it's just not much that I want to say except just the history. I mean, that the whole RAD thing started out as Petra back in 2010, Persevering Enhancement Transforming Rental Assistance. Community organizations around the country got in front of it. They changed it to TRA, Transforming Rental Assistance. And then with community struggles again, it ended up as RAD, but they dug in with RAD and decided that they're going to move forward with it. So it has a pretty long history. It's almost 15 years. Keith Ellison was the one who initiated the original bill. I can tell you, I was invited to the Congressional Black Caucus to show a film that my organization produced post-Katrina. And we got in a room with Keith Ellison and asked him why he did this. And then he looked at us and said, I don't understand what you don't like about this bill. We challenged him, and he left with his hands in his head, and he never gave us a real answer. But it's something that's been in the works for 15 years, right? And so they finally moved forward with it as RAD.
Yeah. Renee, you want to add to what we've been observing in the hearings and anything to add?
Well, one thing I will say is that the residents didn't choose Essence or Related. This was people, there was a resident review committee, but they had to sign non-disclosure agreements. So to this day, we don't know who actually chose them. We know that we see Darlene and Miguel in the photos. Those are our resident association leaders. They were part of it. They continue to be part of it. Darlene basically never speaks. The only time you saw her at a CB4 meeting is when she was asked to come, where she basically said, the mayor and our electeds are for this, let's get it done. Other than that, we haven't seen her. We've barely had any meetings this year. When people start bringing up what's going on with the PACT agreements Related in Essence, it gets shut down. We've had PSA 4 called to the development itself when the meetings happen because of all the arguing that goes on. But as of now, it is a proposal. The special application has not been submitted to HUD. They keep saying, at least on the annual plan, that this decision will be made by the residents. This has never been a resident-driven proposal at all. Nobody told us that we were going into PACT or RAD. These meetings were just happened. Right now, this is about turning out, as much as everyone's saying about the neighborhood, it's also about the residents. We also have language issues that people are not understanding what's going on. Some people still don't believe. Some people saying it's a done deal. Our elected officials do not care. Their attitude is, oh, this is a good thing for the residents. Eric Botcher himself told us that. So as much as everyone says it's a done deal, it isn't. This can continue on. Everyone keeps saying NYCHA is an administrative. NYCHA, we have to remember, is an administrative agency. The thing that nobody talks about is that people need to do their job. It's as simple as that. What is their job? Why don't they do it? If it's the thing to just lease off the land and that's all they and that's all they and that's all they're going to be is people who lease the land and somebody makes profit of it, then you need to say it. But at the rate they're going, they're doing their best to make sure that they're non-functional. NYCHA has the money. Everyone has the money. The money can go into Section 9. There's just no political will. That is the real problem. Once there becomes the will to build public housing and build more of it, and to stop the Fair Cloth Amendment, then things can become better. But it is not a housing crisis we are in. People keep saying that, and you need to stop saying it. It's an affordability. I live across the street of a building that has been empty for over 20 years. Nobody lives there. We walk around every day and we could see on the vacancy of New York how many lots of land. You don't need to build here. You're choosing to build in Manhattan. You have plenty of space all over this city. Nobody does anything. When you start making that change, that's when everything changes. If you're not going to do that, then this will continue.
Well said. Luana, I know you've been out there fighting with me. In fact, we've been on those boards and speaking out. Luana, were you here?
I'm here. I'm just not in. I'm not feeling well today, but I think David, most of what David says, I agree with. I just have a problem with the word affordability. I thank Renee for all the work that her and her coalition are doing. You too, John. Everyone that's been in the fight with NYCHA and 30th Street, back again with 30th Street. The only thing I have is every time we mention numbers, I get Ajira in my head because, as the median income in Chelsea goes up, the amount of housing availability for middle and low income individuals, families goes down. So we have to remember that the median income in Chelsea is over 140 something $1,000. So, and the average income is over 170 something $1,000. So even if you look at the smallest percentage that David had quoted at 20% of affordable units, that would make about $26,000 to $30,000. So everybody in the middle, most of the middle class and low income people are not going to be eligible for any housing. And that's the way it is right now. So, I mean, we really have to petition HPD, our elected, whoever, makes these average median income levels. We have to make them more realistic to the actual people that reside in New York City, and the actual residents, low and moderate income individuals and families, so that they can obtain good housing as well. And I think as long as we have these numbers that stick us to a certain percentage, we're always going to have people without housing. So thank you.
No, excellent. And 30% is cost burden. And
one other thing, they need to make HPD get on to NYCHA and do their job. Make HUD put down their foot on NYCHA and make them do their job.
Yes, excellent, excellent. I'm going to introduce, unless somebody has any questions here, I'm going to introduce Paul.
A fast question for David.
Go ahead.
David, to the best of your knowledge, is Joe's document, I should say CB4's document, static or something that changes if someone were to visit it like every day? Would it change and be updated?
It should be static until, I don't anticipate that they will submit anything else because the comment period is about to close on City of Yes for housing opportunities. So there were comments taken on it in last week's community board meeting. Christine Berthet suggested that perhaps there could be an exception for districts like ours that can prove that they have created a lot of affordable housing on their own. But I think it's probably too late to weigh in. There was an opportunity during the public hearing session of the last community board full board meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex, for that. So that is a nice segue when you talk about the City of Yes and weighing in housing. Paul Graziano, are you here? Are you with us?
I am.
Cool. Why don't you introduce yourself to the folks and give an overview of what you've been seeing in these meetings and where we are.
Sure. So I'm Paul Graziano. I'm an urban planning, zoning, and land use consultant, advocate, etc. I also do historic preservation. Been doing it for almost 30 years as a professional, and more than that as an advocate. And one of the things that I've been deeply involved in the last, really, this is year 4, is this push for from both city and state elected officials to really what this is all about is deregulation of zoning, right? It's really that simple. With Corey Johnson, it was planning together. I was one of the people who shut that down. With Governor Hochul, it was the housing compact. I also shut that down. And now we have the City of Yes, which someone said the City of Mess. We like to say no to the City of Yes. This one makes the other ones look like nursery school. What I can say is this, and let me kind of repeat some of the things that I have heard. One, this is not an affordable housing program. We do not have a housing crisis. We have an affordability crisis. This is 100% correct. This program is a supply side Reaganomics type of program to deregulate zoning to allow developers to build everywhere, anytime, for market rate and luxury rental units. That is the vast majority of this program. The SOP for quote unquote affordability is the UAP. I think David went into great detail, and I think he is extremely accurate in his perception on this. So I won't reinvent the wheel there. Much of this program is geared towards lower density communities. I personally am from a lower density community, and one of the main issues that has come up is the kind of language that's been used throughout this entire process by Dan Garodnick and the Department of City Planning, trying to create an us against them kind of thing, which is totally untrue in this situation. So, the kinds of things that are affecting Chelsea and Manhattan, which is, Manhattan is very different from much of the rest of the city, right? Your density is extremely different, with a few exceptions, from the rest of the city. Your development patterns are different as well. And the types of housing that gets built is different as well. When you live in a single family neighborhood like I do, and now all of a sudden 3 to 5 story apartment buildings with 20 to 40 units are allowed to be built where a single family home was previously only allowed to be built, that is a massive increase in density. There is no infrastructure included in this entire program, none, nor was there with the housing compact, nor with planning together, nor any of these other proposals. So there's no infrastructure. There's nothing helping people. This program was written by developers for developers. It was written by the BLAST Committee, which was a group of people put together by the mayor right after he got elected into office. These were all of his donors, the big real estate developers, the construction industries, and some housing groups. There were no civic groups. There were no community boards. There were no good government groups involved in this. They came up with a list called the Get Stuff Built list, and most of that turned into the City of Yes. So when you have a program that is falsely labeled by this administration as the generator that is going to generate affordable housing, this is a lie. It's just plain and simple. There will be little to no affordable housing being built with this program. What it will do is it will create the opportunity for developers to build market rate rentals anywhere they want at any time. Okay, so who is this geared for, right? So Tom Agnotti, who was, I think, supposed to be on this call, and I don't think he is, but I do want to mention he had a great letter that went out about a month ago. He's from Long Island City, so he's in Queens, but he's on the Queens waterfront. Long Island City is the fastest growing community in the country. Okay, in less than 20 years, the population has more than doubled, and the number of housing units has increased dramatically. And yet, again, according to the city, if we create more and more housing units, the rents will go down. In Long Island City, the rents have gone up staggeringly, along with the population and along with the number of units. So I believe 15 years ago, the average rent was $3,000 a month, and now it's over $5,000 a month in Long Island City. So, this, as I said, this is something, the misinformation and propaganda that is coming out from this administration on the city of Yes, just like they did for the commercial portion of this as well. This is going to ruin this city. It is going to destroy the city and everything that we hold dear. And again, I was the president of the Historic Districts Council 15 years ago. I work with landmark districts. I work with NYCHA residents. I work with middle-class communities, or what's left of them, which is kind of where I live. Okay. Everybody I've spoken to is dead set against this. And if anybody was at the hearing, at the July 10th hearing, which went for 15 hours and would have gone for another 7 or 8 if 100 people hadn't dropped off the call, the press is part of the problem, because the press describes that it was an equally divided room of who was in favor and who was against. The problem was 95% of the people who spoke in favor were on the payroll. They were on the clock. They were either REBNY representatives, Open New York representatives, or other developer representatives or housing group representatives. So they were literally getting a salary to give their testimony, while those who were in opposition, 95% of those were homeowners, tenants, and civic and good government groups. So we have a problem where we have a mayor who is trying to ram this down the throats of the city in an expedited fashion. And I want to make this very clear. There is no housing crisis. Statistic: in 1960, we had 8.1 million people. In 2024, we have 8.2 million people. And in fact, the latest census shows we've gone below 8 million people in the city for the first time in over 25 years. So we are down almost 1 million people from where we were 8 years ago. We have 800,000 more housing units than we did in 1960. So again, this is not an issue of not having enough housing. It's an issue of deregulation of rent-stabilized apartments, deregulation of mandatory units. David, I believe you mentioned pushing for a 10% in all new development. That's a very modest goal. It's something I've been pushing for 20 years already, saying it's outrageous that so many other municipalities across the country have it baked in. They have affordability baked into the zoning code, particularly for high density development, which you can, as a developer, eat that, right? You can eat that number if you're able to build the units, but it has to be baked in. There's no other way to do it. Yes.
Well, is that why you'd recommend, why you settle on 10%? Is because
No, I said that was very modest. I actually pushed for, what I had been pushing for is 15 to 20% baked in, and then if they want to build higher, then they have to include more. So in other words, the basic zoning we have today, which by the way can accommodate, the zoning we have today, if we were built out, could accommodate another 8 to 12 million people. I want to make that very clear. The zoning we have today that the city is saying is outdated. It's 8 to 12 million more people could be accommodated by the zoning that we have today. The city is trying to revert us back to the zoning of 1916. The first zoning ordinance, which, by the way, the build out for that ordinance was 55 million people. So again, I think the way that we have to think about this is, what is the ultimate goal of this administration and its allies? Is it to create affordability? Is it to create affordable units? Or is it to create a smorgasbord for the development community to
Well,
allow to do that?
You're being rhetorical, right?
Oh, no, of course not. Never, never. What I will say, though, you know, I know there's a number of NYCHA folks on here. One of the things that is, you know, very well, obviously, of these 15 proposals, which again aren't really 15 proposals, there's 1,386 pages of this document, is the campus infill provision within the city of Yes. Now, George Janes, who's an urban planner, a colleague, I don't know if he's community board, if he's the consultant for community board 4. I know he consults for a number of the boards, but he did an example of how the campus infill provision would affect NYCHA. He did the Washington houses on the Upper East Side, which go from 97th to 104th Street from 2nd to 3rd Avenues. There are currently 1,500 units, and I believe they have 6 buildings on this campus. The number of additional units that would be allowed as of right, and these would not be affordable units, is an additional 3,000 units. 3,000 units on that campus with the campus infill provision. So again, is that 3,000 units going to be more affordable? And again, losing the tree canopy, all of the environmental aspects of this are thrown out the window. Again, you know, I think you're being way too polite, David. These are all of these agencies are run by a single person, and that's the mayor of New York. He controls every agency. The council doesn't control them. The mayor controls them. So it's whatever his priorities are, and he's clearly put the least priority on the very important environmental issues that make our city livable or less livable. So I could go on, but I hope this gives kind of a round approach to this. You know, again, coming from the lower density communities, everything in there for us is apocalyptic. I mean, I just have to explain this to people that for our communities, that's why 34 community boards, 26 community boards voted unconditional no. 8 boards voted conditional no, and 4 of those 8 boards are in Manhattan. Okay, all the boards out in Queens, Staten Island, Southern and Central Brooklyn, and the North and East Bronx voted hell no, because they know if this goes through, we're finished. And this will wipe out what's left of our communities.
Yeah.
So, and again, we're not trying to pit us against you. In fact, we made sure to vote no, including on the provisions for your communities in Manhattan, because how dare we try to dictate to you? We would not do that. And unfortunately, boards in Manhattan did that exact thing where they said, oh, it's perfectly fine for this stuff in the low density neighborhoods to go through as long as our communities are protected. And that upset a lot of folks that are trying to create solidarity against the most dangerous set of proposals that have ever come forward in the city of New York, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So with that, if there are any questions or comments or anything I can tell, you know.
Paul, do you have a website or a Google Drive?
I can give you my email. I can give you information. I do have a Google Drive. My email is Paul Graziano 2013 at gmail.com. What I have done is I've done neighborhood analyses because the city is refusing to do neighborhood analyses. So I've done over 25 neighborhoods around the city showing what the impacts are going to occur throughout these communities based on this. And the city is doing theoretical models that are nonsense. They're complete nonsense, basically saying nothing's going to happen, everything's going to be okay. And their environmental impact statement did the same thing.
Paul, should I assume you did analysis over in Chelsea and the
I did not. I did analyses in low and middle density communities because you know, I'm basically been working for free, and if I did a community like Chelsea, that would probably take up the entire time of me doing those other 25. But I can say, looking at site locations, it's very clear. And again, George did this great one, which I can forward to you, of the Washington houses, just to show a basic schematic that shows you what could happen there.
Sure, all the information, the better to spread it around. And Rob has a question for you. Rob?
Sure.
So I thank you, Paul, for your presentation. Just a little clarification on Tom and Gotti. He is my co-conspirator at the new school, so we teach together. But his history is one of working for city planning, HPD, and he's an urban planner that taught at Hunter and started Hunter's Center for Planning and Policy. So in my opinion, he knows New York development very well. I think the two of you need to be connected, and which I will do because Renee just asked, but I see Alex put your email in the chat. I will connect the two of you because I think you should have a conversation. But I will apologize on Tom's behalf, folks. He does have some health issues, and my guess is that's why he's not here, because he kind of
Tom and I know each other. Just to let you know, I went to the Hunter program. I graduated from it. It was before he was involved there. Actually, I think at that point he was at Pratt. But I've known Tom for 20 years, and I greatly respect his work. Great.
Yeah, he's taught me a lot. Right. I'm an activist. I had no interest in this shit until I met Tom, and then he educated me, man. Him and Peter Marcusa, right? You want to talk about guys with a foundation for this stuff? I've been blessed to, have those bookends of mentors. So
yeah,
great.
Maybe we can get Tom back on next month. But yeah, I agree. I think there's some conversations to be had, even maybe together prior to that. We have to sift out some action plans. And
I see a hand up from Harvey.
Harvey.
Yes. Paul and all, this is really very interesting and very, very clear and very detailed. But we have to bear in mind that there's inequity in society, that people don't earn the same amount as each other, and they have disadvantages. And that is really the issue. In other words, everyone should be able to enjoy a residence of modest means if there was equity. So some people are making $10 an hour, some people are making $10,000 an hour. Now, if you want a socialist society, bring in Bernie Sanders, okay, we will now make everyone equal, or a communist society, God forbid. Everyone's equal, everyone gets their fair share of everything, food, housing, and so on. So we have a capitalist society. In other words, whoever dies with the most toys wins. That's our capitalist society. So if you want to change the system of government and the system of our society, which some of our presidential candidates want to do, you have to think about what that means. So there's diversity and equity. That statement is true. And another thing in detail is if you can afford an apartment and you get it for what you can afford, that's only 30% of the nut. You got another 70% to deal with: school, food, healthcare, all that stuff. No one is, there are programs for all of that, but the housing is only 30% of the issue. So we can't ignore the other 70%. So there are two things I'm saying. Life is such that there's inequity, and the city of Manhattan is a capitalist environment, and there is no equity, and so people suffer, and people live on the street, and people have the option to move. I know people who move out of the city, they'll move to Texas, or they'll move to Oregon, or they'll move to Tennessee, and they say, oh, I can buy a mansion for $100,000. Why am I living in this $3,000 a month, 1 bedroom, dilapidated apartment, I can move to Tennessee and get a house for $100,000 and have a better life and grow food in my backyard. So everyone has options. And as you say, Manhattan is decreasing in population. It's because it's just too expensive. And not only because it's expensive, because it just doesn't work anymore. Transportation doesn't work. Infrastructure doesn't work. The air is bad. There's more scaffolding per square foot than there are people, I imagine. It's just a city that's falling down. It's been ignored. You look at Penn Station. I was there yesterday. Out of the ceiling, everywhere, are these tubes and pipes dripping down into big water bottles because the space is too humid. I imagine there's condensation going on, and the ceilings are dripping water. I mean, that is a rat's nest. And that is disgusting for the city of New York. And there are many other parts that are going on in New York that are disgusting. The city has missed the boat, and maybe the country has. I don't mean to be pessimistic. We've ignored infrastructure. We've ignored housing. Our politics has been ignored. We don't talk to each other. We don't agree on anything. So, I know this committee is dealing with housing. That's what we deal with, I know. But the problem, it needs to be addressed on a larger scale. And you say, well, we don't get funding. Look, there's plenty of funding because the federal government has a big printing press, and they keep printing funding. So it's a question of who gets to the to the room to pick up the money faster than others. And can you blame the mayor? The mayor, I don't know who you can blame. Anyway, I'm just in general, I'm saying that the problem is bigger than just housing, and we're a capitalist society. And if you want to change the way we conduct our life in society, then you start to look at other forms of socialist and communist type of forms of societies that we don't.
So thank you, Harvey. Unfortunately, folks, I have to go. I'm actually not in the country right now. I'm 6 hours ahead. So I wanted to get on here. As I said, if there's any other questions about what I talked about, I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise, I'm going to have to sign off. So if there's any other questions.
Any last questions for Paul?
Thank you.
Thank you. And please email me, and I'm happy to send you stuff. And let's continue the conversation. Absolutely. Because things are going to pick up very hard starting in September. Okay. When the City Planning Commission makes their vote. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Paul.
I want to take a privilege, if folks will allow me here, just quickly to respond to Harvey. Harvey, I was in Penn Station the day that the governor announced the new Penn Station. She's given a press conference, and water is dripping on top of her head in the brand new Penn Station. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
So I rest my puddle.
Harvey, what you
okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. What you brought up could be a long conversation, and but we have to look at being a humane society and humane city, and that requires housing as a foundation for people to live and breathe. And when you take it away and you suppress them and you burden them with costs, then they're not allowed to grow. They're not allowed to grow, and that's what the system does. It destroys our water, land, resources, and puts people under oppression, creates wars, and we can go on, but I'll leave it at that.
This is why I believe in human rights over civil rights. The rest of my case.
Yeah. So I was hoping Tom would be here, and then also John, but Massengale, I'm not sure what happened to him either, but it looks like we had a quite healthy conversation just with David and Mark and all of us and Renee and Luana. Wonderful input. Let me just kind of go back to the agenda. It's getting a little late here. We tend to always go over public concerns. Oh, and I saw some new names here. Let me see if they're still on. I wanted to welcome them, and And I see someone's left. Yeah. Ben Moore, you want to say hello to us and had any thoughts or questions? Okay, he's shy.
Ed is not shy.
Am I audible?
Yeah, Ben, go ahead.
I'm a refugee from Harvey and Damu's other committee, and my principal interest remains more in the placemat than in the various dishes and plates and glasses and napkins and things that are set out upon it. In other words, the overall plan of the city underlying housing and schools and transportation and hospitals and prisons and so forth is of interest to me at the moment. But this is one of the most important discussions going on about the things that sit upon that placemat. So I hope to be an occasional visitor. I tossed a couple of tidbits into the chat that are my usual tidbits. Ignore or read at your pleasure or displeasure, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, well, thanks, Ben. Appreciate your input here. Rochelle Stearns. Anything to sign off with? Sam, are you with us? I think you were popping on and off. Your hair looks great, Ben.
I am here. That's a modest bedhead. How are you, John?
Good, good. You want to kind of give a little your sense of the meetings we've had, and we just had one recently that they called me late, said they had room for me, but I was upstate, so I couldn't be there.
Well, yesterday, and I'm working on a piece to go out of it. Yesterday, the railroads, after spending a year in preparation, came forward with what I would politely call an attempted smackdown of through running, where they suggested that, and they had some pretty wild assertions that through running can't happen. They even suggested it didn't meet international best practice standards. And they're still monkeying around with the numbers. They had suggested we could, that their big gold standard is you need to get to 48 trains per hour under the Hudson to meet growing capacity from New Jersey. And while I agree that there's needed more capacity from New Jersey, I'm not sure it needs to double, and I'm not sure they're paying any attention to COVID-19 or working from home. But be that as it may, they had told us we get to 42 trains per hour. I'm certain they didn't like the fact that I immediately turned around and said, well, we could probably get to 44 and 46 with any pencil sharpening. And I think that scared them. And so they now put through running from Rethink back to 38 trains per hour. There were other things they said, a lot of exaggerations, some of which we'll have to address. To their credit, they did take live questions for almost an hour, and a lot of our people got questions off. It's actually a very sage question by Layla, but I would say that I'm calling them through running deniers now. I'm minting that in a piece that goes out today. They and their coterie of sycophants we're really trying to say, let's separate the through running question from the gateway question. We need to get the capacity built at Penn Station, and through running can wait till another day, which in their estimation is 2080 at the earliest. And frankly, if you listen to them carefully, they're really saying it will never happen. Or if it happens at all, it might be in the middle of the next century. So predictable, disappointing. I did get up and say, hey, look, their lead, Foster Nichols. I said, Foster, you say something different every meeting. 2 years ago, you told us tracks 1 and 4 and 17 through 21 couldn't accommodate through running. Now they can. You told us 42 trains per hour in March. Now you're telling us 38. We need an independent review, or a second opinion. You guys are all over the map. And by the way, I said, you're not independent. You're paid for by the railroad. So what is unfortunate is that we don't have a strong governor in either state saying, hey, I'd like to pay for an independent review of through running with no one's hand on the scale. I also said and criticized them for spending gazillion dollars on a consultant to survey international train stations when they have an employee, Andy Byford, who ran the Toronto system for 6 years, which is one of the systems they were evaluating, and it's the one they consider most analogous to our own. Also implemented Crossrail, the Elizabeth line in London, and had a lot to do with Thameslink, the north-south through running component in London. I'd be surprised if they've spent more than 10 hours with Andy, and I can't imagine how much money they've spent on WSP or the Erupt firm. I won't take too much longer, John. What I would say to me, the big takeaway is, and I'll be sending something out today that people can look at. They acknowledged, and Layla did a great job of pressing this point. They don't have a plan for Penn South. They don't have a track plan for Penn South that can get them to 48 trains per hour. They've been very quiet about this, attacking everybody else, but hiding from that fact. Well, they're not going to be able to hide from it much longer. They claim, of course, we're going to be able to get to it. They've been working on this project for 10 years. We suspect, and our analysis is that if you're sending trains back through New Jersey half empty, or doing turning in the station or returns in the station, you impact the capacity such that they're not going to get to 48 trains per hour. So it really is the ultimate bait and switch to be out criticizing, all these other plans, and they don't have a plan. So we'll be pointing that out today and keeping after them. We're going to keep pressing hard for the independent review. We're also going to press to get Andy Byford involved because he's a can-do person. They have people who have been wed to the negative answer for 10 years, and they've built their careers around it, and they just are not going to be capable unless somebody takes a stun gun to them to turn around their thinking. And so, it's a little disheartening yesterday because the press, they gave us some coverage, but you have to get through 6 paragraphs before you read what they say. And so there's a lot of, frankly, falsehoods that are out there in the media. And I do fault people who provides these forums to these folks and lets them run unchecked. And I told the Daily News, who issued an editorial yesterday about Amtrak lies, I said, the next one you should do it kind of like the Trump debate when they said there were at least 42 lies. They should do that. There's some things that are pretty crazy there. So that's where we're going on through running. On the station itself, Layla's going to have a design forum, or City Club's going to have a design forum in November that we'll be participating in. And so behind all this, there's no federal money for remediating the station or the 17 or 18 billion dollars they need from Penn South. So, we're in a sword fight in an empty arena. So we'll see how that all goes. But the one thing I would say to this group, because as I always tease John, you're more left of center than I am, doesn't mean I'm not left of center, but when we're talking about equities, through running is an equitable growth pattern. It will provide tremendous economic benefits to Newark, Passaic, Patterson, Sunnyside, Jamaica, the South Bronx. It really is something that everybody should be able to get favor of. It doesn't pick winners and losers like congestion pricing does, although I support seeing congestion pricing. It really should be something that people are pressing as a real home run for the region. And it's really being implemented, or has been implemented, in all our peer international cities and increasingly our domestic peers. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. If anybody has any questions now or after the meeting, you should know how to reach out to me.
Questions, anyone?
Yeah, hi, Ben. Not Ben. I was talking to Ben in the chat. Hi, Sam.
Luana, how you be?
As always, here we go. It's a merry-go-round. Sam, so what's the next steps? What are the next steps?
I think the next steps are, we had done this incredibly shrinking objection series, which I think some of you have seen, where we take something they say and really deconstruct it and point out what BS it is. I announced in something today that we're going to be starting up a new series, and I do accuse them of playing whack-a-mole. No sooner do you retire an objection, they come forward with 8 more, 10 more, and they think it'll just wear us out. But that's not all we're going to do. We are really agitating more affirmatively for an independent review. I've been in discussions with a number of the state elected officials, and Peg Breen has been a real ally in this, as have others. And I think that we've really got to press for the independent review. Amtrak's gonna hawk on a hairball before they think of getting Andy Byford involved, but I'm gonna keep doing that. And, you know, we have to fight the wars we can afford, et cetera. I look forward to this being one component of the block party on the 14th. I think it's going to be very important that our local electeds know we're holding them accountable for this. Liz Kruger was there yesterday. Robert Gottheim from Nadler's office was there yesterday. Someone from Leroy Comrie's office was there yesterday. Felicia Park Rogers was there from Nadler's office. We're not really sure where Nadler stands. He's vacillated. Comrie has been very strong in our support, but Tony Simone, Eric Botcher, Levine, we have to keep after their people and say, don't screw around with this one. These people are, you know, going to bury the equitable transit plan for this region and throw away the key for 60 to 100 years. And we've got to keep letting them know where we stand. Does that answer the question, Luana?
Somewhat, yeah. Everything. Well, you know where we are. If you need
No,
help.
I do, and I'm counting on you. And I'm really, look, I'm always glad when somebody else does a form and I don't have to do all the work to run it. And I will help with what we're doing on the 14th. I think that's a big deal. We got to show big time there. We've got a lot of different issues, but we've got to show. And I would say to this group, I look at the Olympics as like one of the greatest affirmations of DEI, which the Republicans are trying to make a dirty word, that I've ever seen. You'll see a Chinese American beating a woman from China at the end of a relay. There are people from all different colors and all these countries that I didn't used to think of that way. And it's a meritocracy. The Olympics are a pure meritocracy. And we, whatever our politics are the meritocratic answer, we want what's best for the broadest number of people, and especially people who are less advantaged. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I know, Luana, I can expect you to amplify that.
I like that story.
Absolutely, me too.
Design forum, Sam. Is this a lot of different designers coming? Of course, the ones we've seen.
I think Layla and the City Club have solicited the ones we've already seen. There may be another. I'm sure Harvey may have some interest. You know, I don't know too much more about it, but it's going to be at the CUNY Graduate Center, and it's going to be up for a month. So I think that's a real positive development. And
yeah,
you know, we need to do a lot of work between the block party and that. We'll probably do some style of town hall or even a Cooper Union event for Rethink. I'm still thinking about that, but I think it's summertime and the living is easy. I think that really building towards a great event on the 14th is important. And Luana should start writing her speech. Never needs to write when she just goes off.
I'm just gonna laugh right now. Thank you for making me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Or maybe a little bit worse.
Hey, look, I will tell you yesterday, I heard somebody talking on the way I was out of the meeting, and he said there must be something about Rethink's doing, because why would the railroads even do a meeting like this? Why would they feel they needed to do a smackdown? And they felt they needed to do a smackdown because we're getting too much traction, and there are too many people saying, what's wrong with you? So you know, it's going to be interesting.
We've been there for a while. I know we're getting, you know, we have our ups and downs and waves and being tired, and that's why we need to keep coalescing and yeah, and the forums. But we're not stopping.
John, I've got to drop to finish this document, but I will come back on.
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
And thanks for the time.
Yeah, great. No, it's great to have you. We're going to conclude this meeting.
Tom just called me. He apologizes to everybody. He said it's just an age thing. Sometimes you just forget. He thought the date was tomorrow, but he's willing to come on next month. So I just got off the phone with him.
Okay, good. I'm glad he's well. Okay, well, we'll add him next month. I got another person to add, and then maybe we can continue this discussion, because I think we've laid it out nicely. I think what we really kind of need to do is look at what's right about it too. I mean, we don't want to say no to everything. We want to turn this into a people's plan, I think. So what's right about it? And I think that's a good question for everybody. We're not going to answer it here, and it's towards the end. But not only what's right about it, the outcomes. We have to discuss the outcomes of we have to show a big picture of what can be if we do this thing right. I think I really believe this. I think we have to take this on ourselves as a public. We can't leave this to because they're putting developers on the community boards and they're swaying even on the very base level of things and I'm like and they're trying to co-op groups. We've seen that in NYCHA with this CACWAG. We've seen this in CACWAG party with Renato. I mean, we see this over and over. Did I say that right? Is CACWAG associated with NYCHA or is it associated with Renato? I think it's associated with Renato because yeah, I think yeah, I have that right. Anyway, so I'll end with that unless we have any public needs. I've asked that earlier. I don't see anybody that might have any public needs. Andre, how are you doing? Everything good with you? Need support anywhere? Anybody needs any support? Anybody want a last word, especially new names like Schnell, Winter Schnell? That's a lovely name. Gil Frederick, anything?
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Winter, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to mention, I don't have it in my bio, but I'm from Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal's office. And so I want to sit in just to gauge community feedback and, see what MSCC is discussing. And so I appreciate everyone's time and, I've been taking notes and plan to pass it on to the Assembly member and our chief of staff. And I'll drop my email as well in case anyone wants to reach out to me directly because I kind of oversee the community interfacing.
Sure.
So, yeah, but overall, I really appreciate it and very, very helpful for our office to attend. So thank you guys for having me.
I know Linda's a proponent of housing and for the public good. I don't know where she stands on all these issues. That'd be good to hear. And Winter, you've received our email directly for the meeting or did you get it through someone else from your office?
I believe the chief of staff or my legislative director. It was in our calendar. I can check that one. I'll be sure to email you, John, and I can get myself directly added.
That's what I was going to do. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Feel free. If you have anything you want to speak to, always let me know. You're more than welcome to come on and give updates. So we have a little update section in the beginning when we're happy to have you.
Fantastic. Okay. I will definitely reach out to you then.
Okay, great. Anybody else before we go? Okay. Well, just to finish off, again, we have the September 14th New York City Social Justice and Music Fest. We need support. We need help. We need your involvement. If you want to get involved in any way, planning committee, I can put you on a planning committee meeting. I need board members. I need members, on committees. So if you're interested, the door is open. Our website is nearing finish, I promise. And the Communities Together is going to be an all-day thing, block party on 30th Street, as I mentioned. And we hope you come out and support. We want to make a big splash. Any kind of installations, information table, you want some information on a table, if you're a nonprofit or if you're a block association or a people's association, it's open. And I'll end with that. Unless someone has the very last word, wants the very last word, I'll give it to you.
It's Sadie, by the way, and
Okay.
I'm affiliated with a lot of orgs, RPPH. I also volunteer on the board of directors for Met Council on Housing, and so I was on WBI a couple of weeks ago with another resident, with Joel Copperman for Environmental Justice Initiative, who was complaining about the Reese water because I'm a resident at Reese. And so I've been speaking out about it for about 2 years now. So now the thing is, I put the article in the chat in regards to the city from Greg Smith, his article about how they haven't really got rid of all the chemical causing agents and materials that's been here for over 19 years. So yeah.
That's where's he?
You talking about Joel?
No, the chemicals, and you were just
In
talking about-
Reese. I put the article in the chat. It's on the city by Greg Smith. It came out August 4th or August 5th over the weekend. Basically, I went to the BMCC here in NYCHA, and that was a circus in itself. I got a grand picture of Elisa Bovahaya giving me the stink eye because I told her she need to get fired because she's corrupt and she's got blood on her hands. So so yeah, it's been very eventful. But I'm glad you guys have something happening on my birthday. But I got another event I have to take place. I have to deal with Met Council. So I have a pre engagement, but I'll be around, that's for sure. And I love Alex. I know Alex through a lot of the Housing Justice for All meetings. So yeah, it's a small world.
I want your group involved though with that event. I was going to reach out to Andrea. I do want you, and that article you mentioned, I read that too. I wanted to reach out to people about that. I think we have all these issues about our foundation, is dilapidating underneath us, and I think it's a good cause to coalesce around. And I think, yeah, if you're not going to be around, and if I'll reach out to Andrea and
well, I'll also make mention to Andrew to see if there's a possibility that from Met Council, because there's supposed to be a political education workshop about NYCHA, about RAD. So maybe you could guest speak, but that happens to be on September 14th, which is my birthday, which I'm loving it all. So yeah.
I have a couple of good guest speakers. I wouldn't speak on that. I know too many that would do a much better job than I would.
Okay,
And,
I'll give you my email. Let me put my email in the chat if anybody wants to, be a guest speaker or what may have you. The more the merrier, because the same way NYCHA gets together and they got all the resources, we have to pull our resources as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, send me information on that and how many speakers you want, and I'll help you with that.
Okay.
And there was a couple that could that were on here actually could speak very well to that.
Okay.
So if you haven't met Renee and Marquis, I'll certainly introduce you to those folks. But anyway, it's good to have you here. And you got this email directly, correct?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well, with that, I'll say good day to everyone. Have a great day, and then we'll carry this conversation a little bit into next month, and then we'll look at. And if you have any ideas about what's right about this, we're going to be reaching out for those answers. And if you want to send them ahead of time, that would be great. I think we have a nice agenda already planned after this meeting, and Tom will be with us, and David, you'll be back with us, correct? Maybe. I think he said yes. All right, everybody, have a great day, and Sammy.
David's everywhere. David's our new advocate.
No, yeah, does a great job. You do a great job, David. Really do.
He does.
Amazing.
Bye.
All right.